you so much. It's certainly a pleasure. James, it's a pleasure to meet you. And Tracy, thank you for the invitation. Not sure that you've ever had a marijuana advocate speak before you. It's certainly a hot topic across this country. I think you can't turn on the internet, look at the news, unless you see some story about either medical marijuana, some form of decriminalization, legalization, or industrial hemp grown, reintroduced into many states. So what I hope to do today is just give you some talking points. Maybe it'll spark some questions that you may have. Maybe you support it, maybe you don't. My main theme here is you don't necessarily have to agree with marijuana consumption to want to reform our criminal justice laws. And if you think back a ways, you have to go to the history books about alcohol prohibition. And yes, alcohol is bad. Alcohol kills, can be dangerous. Most of us use it responsibly. Some just do stupid stuff, okay? And there's laws to cover that. And so what we're trying to do is take a look at the marijuana laws and see what alternative there is. If prohibition has not worked in the past 80 years with marijuana, then what are the alternatives? And that's what we're trying to explore. And we do that by continuing the conversation and sparking interest in people, and to know that it's not a matter of if cannabis, as I prefer to call it, cannabis, is going to be decriminalized or legalized or some other reform in this country. It's just when will it happen, and I certainly hope it happens within my lifetime. Let's talk about why was marijuana outlawed. It started really about the 1930s, 1936. Congress was taking testimony from certain government agencies. Suddenly, what we knew as hemp and cannabis became this word marijuana. Nobody knew what marijuana was. They knew what hemp was. They knew what cannabis was. But this new plant, this new thing that everybody was talking about, marijuana, somehow has become the scourge on society. And congressional testimony shows that those who testified said that marijuana was causing all sorts of problems across this country. White women were patting their foot to jazz music. Black men were looking white men in the eyes. That it was causing disrespect amongst certain in our society toward certain other people in our society. So this scourge must end, and somehow, so they created basically a tax act in 1936. What was interesting about 1936 is it was the same year that a synthetic product called nylon was created. And there, you can research this. There's certainly this conspiracy issue about the certain corporate interests in America that wanted to outlaw a natural fiber because at the time cannabis hemp was being used for newspapers, for fibers, for clothing, and I do have samples here of actual stock, finished materials such as shirts, some of the edible products such as the hemp seed, chocolate-covered hemp seeds, twine from Walmart. So hemp is still being used in this country. Unfortunately, we can only grow it here under limited circumstances, but we can import it from all over the world. So we're bringing in nearly $1 billion in hemp products from all over the world, but yet we can only experimentally grow in certain states. Georgia is not one of those. Let's move forward through the decades, the 60s. We think of marijuana, we might think of hippies, we might think of protests, we might think of that movement. It certainly came out of the speakeasies in the underground and was more open in our society. By the 70s, Richard Nixon had declared a war on marijuana, and the war was on. We're going to stop this scourge. And of course, we'll get into the political issues of what is now being discovered about why certain people were being targeted with laws around 1970 with stricter laws. Let's talk about the 1980s. We had we had Ronald Reagan and Nancy who wanted us to just say no. How did that work for us? Well, not so good. It seemed that during their administration and over periods of time, the black market in marijuana and other drugs was certainly escalated. Drugs were flooding our streets. We began building prisons. We packed our prisons. We had one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. And it still didn't stop this, the inflow of drugs, and anything you can make profit on, there's a market out there for it. Of the 1990s, well, let me back up a little bit. Around the 1970s, also something happened called NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It was the first organized effort to try to change our laws, and they began trying to work toward that, and still exists today. And in fact, I formed one of the chapters back in the 80s, trying to bring attention to this issue. We talked about the building of jails and prisons. We've tried to lock people up for drugs and marijuana. Today in Georgia, we arrest some 30,000, probably more than 30,000 people for marijuana. In Georgia, we have one of the highest incarceration rates in the nation. Thanks to Governor Deal and others in our legislature, we've seen some criminal justice reform efforts that are shifting away from lock them up mentality to let's assess their problems and see if we can find alternatives to incarceration. Because we certainly can lock people up. That's certainly not a problem in the state of Georgia. The problem I think we have is how to treat people and identifying people who just simply want to alter their consciousness versus those who actually commit crimes against other people. And somehow we tend to mingle these issues together, and a lot of resources are being, I would say, wasted. That should not be wasted. And we've got people who are truly addicted to drugs that cannot get treatment unless you're arrested and somehow forced into it. I'd like to see a system where and I'm not talking about necessarily heroin, I think number one problem in this country is prescription drugs. And a lot of people in our communities, your neighbors, are certainly addicted to drugs, and they don't necessarily want to be addicted. Most people don't want to be drug addicts. And so what do we offer people who don't have insurance programs? What type of programs do we offer? So this is not the reform issue that we try to talk about in Georgia. The 21st century, things have certainly changed since 1936. Marijuana laws across this country are changing. We've got 25 states that have some form of medical marijuana, oils or edibles, or some other form of use of medical marijuana, cannabis. It's regulated, it's controlled, you must have a card. In Georgia, I think it's been 3 years now, Governor Deal and the legislature determined that we were going to at least have a limited medical program here in Georgia. In fact, around 1980, Georgia was one of the first states in the nation to enact a cannabis research law, which involved cancer therapy and glaucoma. Ironically, glaucoma is not on the list today for acceptable medical uses, which we'd like to see certain conditions included. But basically what the law in Georgia today does, that is, if you can take proof of your medical conditions, of certain 8 different medical conditions, to a doctor willing to participate in this program, the state of Georgia will issue you a medical marijuana card. What does that mean? It means really nothing. It means that if you can smuggle cannabis oil only, up to 5% THC, or a 1-to-1 ratio, unlimited of all the other compounds, with limitations on the THC, the psychoactive, so-called psychoactive product, compound in cannabis. So if you are willing to risk importing from other states against federal law, Governor Deal and the legislature says that you can possess up to 20 ounces of this oil. And 20 ounces, you know what a 20-ounce drink Coke bottle looks like. You can possess that much of 5% THC at any given time. The trick is importing it to Georgia. What we tried last year the last session was introduce a bill that would allow for in-state cultivation, that would allow for extraction of products and the dispensary of these products here in Georgia, taking away that element of the threat of arrest from the federal government. So if we can grow it here, we don't ship it across state lines, then it would not be illegal federally. And like the 25 other states, as long as you comply with the law, you can possess it for medical purposes. It's things like certainly certain pain management, certainly, I'm sorry, I don't have the whole list here, but a list of medical conditions. If you can qualify, you can get a card in Georgia. We want to push it beyond that. We do want cultivation here in Georgia. It can be regulated. It can be done professionally. It can be controlled. We will know what is in these products. Unlike a lot of people are now importing stuff into Georgia that they may not know exactly what's in it. In fact, some of these companies, we don't know where their products are coming from, and we need to know the source of those products and what is in there. In Georgia, also we've introduced criminal justice reform. That is moving the penalty of marijuana. In the state of Georgia, if you possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana, it is a misdemeanor. Up to 1 year in jail, $1,000 fine. More than 1 ounce, it can be up to 10 years in prison and I think a $10,000 fine. Quite a difference. And I did brought some samples. I brought a little show and tell here. Be careful. No, this is tobacco. This is the killer in America, but it's tobacco. But what I'm demonstrating here is one of these bags is a felony. If it was marijuana, it would be a felony, and one bag is a misdemeanor. And the point is, can you distinguish between a felony and a misdemeanor? 1 year in jail and 10 years in jail. Well, I'll just tell you, this is a misdemeanor bag and this is a felony bag. And what we're trying to do is, of course, raise the felony amount up where it is above what a normal average person would possess for personal use, and try to distinguish between the commercial market and the personal use market. What we have is we estimate about 10% of our population at any given time may be using cannabis for whatever reason. Some it's medical, some it's for recreation, like simply want to experience something different. Maybe it's like drinking a glass of wine. We would like to treat cannabis more like wine than heroin, for instance. We believe there is a difference. We believe that as a society, if we can tolerate the side effects and bad effects of alcohol and tobacco, which we estimate killing hundreds of thousands of people each year, we tend to tolerate that under what? Under maybe a freedom to do what we want, as long as it's regulated, it's taxed. Can we not do that with cannabis? Other states are doing it. We've got, this November, several states will have initiatives on their ballots across this country, and they will be determining what they want to do. Florida will have a broad medical cannabis law initiative to vote on. They require a supermajority, a 60% must vote. The last vote, I think it was 2 years ago, they got 58% of voters. Understanding our elected officials get elected with 50 plus 1 vote, but yet on these types of issues they needed 60%. So 2% short. A well-known attorney, John Morgan, Morgan & Morgan, has put multi-millions of dollars into the campaign in Florida trying to push that issue. Criminal justice reform, with these 30-something thousand arrests, we believe it's maybe 30-something thousand arrests that may probably, if we eliminate that, there might be a lot less problems with contact with police. We're having issues with people getting arrested, losing their jobs, losing their educational opportunities, and you say, well, just quit smoking pot. Well, people aren't going to quit smoking pot. They're going to keep doing it, and unfortunately the consequences are there, and I'm a person who believes in taking responsibility for your actions. If you don't like the law, you're going to disobey it, you're going to be responsible for your actions, whether you like the law or not. So I'm saying that if you want to change the laws, I hope people would do like I do and try to change the laws and reform the laws in some way that reduces the harm of prohibition. So we hope to have legislation introduced and pre-filed in December that hopefully will raise the felony up to, say, 3 ounces, not 1 ounce. A lot of people, it's like buying, you buy 1 beer and you buy a 6-pack of beer, it's a little cheaper. Buying a 6-pack, the same way with marijuana. So most people don't want to save a little money. They buy more than a bag of weed. They buy 2 or 3. And so typically, because you have 2 bags of weed does not necessarily mean you are a dealer or you have intent to distribute. And I think that's an important part of this. Though the only connection I see with marijuana with other drugs generally is the black market. Those who sell chemicals on the black market tend to sell cannabis on the black market. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on how you look at this, the Mexican importation of cannabis is dwindling. Because why? Because we have states that are now producing right here some of the best quality of cannabis in the world is being grown right here in this country and perhaps right here in the state of Georgia. Don't underestimate what's already being grown here in this state, indoors and outdoors. So here we are. We've got this issue that we've tried to deal with for some 80-something years now. And marijuana is as prevalent in our society as it ever has been. So I'm trying to ask the question, what is the alternative to locking people up and arresting people, creating that record that they'll possibly carry with them the rest of their lives? Think about this. Tomorrow morning, Governor Deal has signed a bill. He's going to outlaw tobacco in the state of Georgia. Come Friday morning, what do you think is going to happen? The black market's going to kick in immediately. There's going to be people selling tobacco on the street corners. Some industrial people might be growing it in their backyard. Tobacco leaves in the backyard. They're producing their own. Think about in the 1930s with alcohol prohibition. The issue was, well, alcohol is dangerous and it's immoral and it's whatever. Let's outlaw it. And we tried that. It created more corruption, more black market, bad products, death, more harm. So we repealed it. Ironically, Georgia never repeal alcohol prohibition. I guess after 2/3 of the states repealed it, Georgia didn't feel a need to even vote on the issue. So the state of Georgia has yet to repeal alcohol prohibition, yet we're now seeing even the alcohol issue is still being dealt with on the local level, from county by county and city by city, Sunday sales, etc. We can see Georgia moving forward, and communities are making their own decisions. Do we want this in our community or not? And I can see that with cannabis. It's like, does my county want to be a dry county or a green county, let's say? And that would be a decision to be made by the locals on the local level. And speaking of local level, we had one issue happen this summer, the city of Clarkston. Have you ever heard about the city of Clarkston and their reform bill? They did not legalize, they did not really decriminalize. What they did was they created an ordinance, a local ordinance under their home rule that would allow for a fine, no arrest, a fine of $75, regardless of how many times you get caught with marijuana, less than 1 ounce. Cities can put that within their ordinance. And what Clarkston is doing, they cannot force the law enforcement to follow the ordinance. What they did was encourage them to use the ordinance within their city. Certainly state and county officials can still arrest you and lock you up, and you go through the process of bonding and criminal record and all that goes with that. So Clarkston is one of the first cities in Georgia to really say, we don't want to arrest people for marijuana in this city. We're looking at Athens, Clark County. I've actually been in contact with 2 or 3 other cities around Georgia that says we want to at least have a discussion and let's have testimony. Let's bring in the issues from all sides and let's talk about how we deal with marijuana in this country. With a population of, say, 9 to 10 million people, we estimate at least 10%, about 1 million people in Georgia may be in possession or at least use cannabis at some point. That's a lot of people. 1 million people in Georgia probably participate in cannabis in one form or the other. So here I am, and I enjoy speaking before people, trying to spark this debate and probably plant a seed in your mind that will grow. and that we can start thinking about this issue and how do we want to deal with it. You know, there's issues of if you're a person of color, you're probably 4 to 10 times more likely to be arrested in Georgia for marijuana than a person of my color. Don't know why that is. The answer is not to arrest more white folks. The deal is to try to arrest less folks and see if we can deal with this in a little bit, I guess, less harmful fashion. So, how are we doing?
We're about on time. Ask a question.
Oh, absolutely. Love to take your questions. Yes, sir.
Are you promoting marijuana as being legal? Are you promoting medicinal marijuana? Are you promoting 1 ounce or more as not being a felony?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes to all. I advocate for all positions. That is, I believe that if we push the cart enough, that we're going to move the cart, and it's maybe incremental, and so we need to find out how.
Do you feel as though then if the marijuana was legal, that would help eliminate the drug problem for the people?
No, I never said that. Drug issues is a whole other issue. My point is, do we treat marijuana use as a police issue and a law enforcement issue, or do we deal with it as a health issue and deal with it from that aspect? We dealt with tobacco as a health issue and discouraged its use, limited when you can use it. We put taxes on it. I mean, if we raise taxes, and I hate taxes, like most people do, but the sin tax, if you was to put another $5 tax on tobacco, we would probably see tobacco use drop dramatically, just that. And we know the problems with tobacco. It doesn't solve those problems. What we're doing is we're not arresting people for tobacco and going through that cycle. So I'm trying to kind of treat it more evenly with the other so-called sin commodities in the state of Georgia. It's like, how do we deal with it? Yes, sir.
I'm just going to go ahead and give you up front. I'm an elected official.
Okay.
But I'm also an ex-cop.
Okay.
So my opinion is going to be a little bit different than yours. However, and I'm going to make more of a statement than I have a question. I also want to know how often you smoke a week or month. I'm being serious. I mean, you're an active user.
I do, yes.
Okay, fair enough. So, for my opinion, is medical marijuana probably has a great place.
Okay.
I've listened to a lot of testimony from a lot of parents, even with seizures as well. And your point is exactly right. They get their card, and now they're going to be a criminal while they're trying to give medication to their child. I get that completely. I am a firm believer that it's a gateway. I've just seen too much that leads me to believe it's a gateway to other stuff. I don't know if that will change if it can be legalized or not, because we haven't experienced that. But I will tell you from another point of view, there's a lot of the public that you have conversation with, like my employees, some of them, and I get like, oh yeah, that's right, you told me that. I can't imagine if they were smoking how much more I would get that. And they're just not as alert, not on their top of their game.
As your business, you probably wouldn't allow them to smoke because you might drug test them. And I'm not advocating that people smoke marijuana and go jump in the forklift, okay? There's probably laws in place that and rules in place that in your employer would have the right to say. And today, employers in Georgia have the right to say, if you smoke tobacco, you're not going to be employed in this country, in this company. Same way with marijuana. So they can test you, they can keep you out of the workplace, and that's your decision to make. You want a job or you want to smoke pot? That's it. And that's how I think we deal with alcohol and tobacco. That companies certainly have a right to make that determination.
So I would love to know if there's any kind of studies all out there on productivity, just in general, on any kind of performance levels from these states that have legalized it before and after legalization.
Well, you know, I don't have them offhand, and I'm sure I would say that people who want to smoke marijuana today smoke it. Some of them work for companies that don't allow it, and they risk that too. And some people smoke tobacco, and their companies don't allow that, but they risk that too. And those are just risks that people take in their lives. As far as a gateway drug, again, I think the number one connection with other drugs, is the black market. And I think if you'll talk to your kids, or talk to yourself and ask, what drug did you first use? I think most people start with alcohol and tobacco. Today, it may be prescription drugs from the doctor. A lot of kids are being prescribed a lot of mind-altering and mood-altering substances. from the doctor's office. So, you know, that's been the big issue. Is it the gateway drug? I've got doctors that say it's the exit drug. It's the exit drugs that cannabis is being used as a substitute for a lot of opioid type of drugs. Very, yes.
I don't necessarily have a question either, but I would like to act as kind of a foil against what you're saying. I don't
Sure.
propose to be an expert, but I certainly, as a physician, children and the use of marijuana. There are a lot of anecdotal reports, but there is not good research yet to show that marijuana use in children is beneficial. They're working on it, and some of it looks really promising with seizures.
Yeah, well, I've never advocated children using.
Well, but I'm just, as a clarification for the group, is that, you know, also, you've legalized it to have possession of it, and as you said, it's illegal to obtain it in the state. So that makes it very hard as a physician to be writing prescriptions for something that you know someone's going to have to break the law in order to get. The other thing I'd like to say is that in the potency of marijuana that's available today is dramatically different from what was here in the 50s and the 60s. And one of the big problems that they've seen in California as well as in Colorado is that it has not dramatically decreased the amount of illegal sales, because what's available legally is of such lower potency that people are still, that are using it for a mind-altering substance, are still going to their dealer to get things that are more potent. And one of the concerns for us here in Georgia is that a lot of times the marijuana is being laced with other things, so that a child thinks he's only smoking a marijuana cigarette, and instead he's also getting a hit of fentanyl or heroin.
Again, I don't advocate children smoking marijuana.
Well, I'm just saying that those are some of the concerns, you know, when you just give carte blanche. The other thing is that in Colorado, where they've legalized, there's been a recent study that's come out that showed the number of hospitalizations for children for accidental overdose and toxicity has dramatically increased because it's more prevalent in the homes. And
people do stupid things. This happens in Prohibition also. Children use of marijuana has gone on for decades under Prohibition, and laws that we would enact today would have a 21 age limit. Kids that want marijuana today, I guarantee you they can find it faster than I can find marijuana. It's out there for them right now under the current system we have. It doesn't stop that. As far as potency, I would relate that to alcohol. Some people like 2% beer, others like 5.5% to 8% beer. Some drink liquor, some drink hard liquor. And so there's a potency issue there. Do you want to get really crazy on alcohol, or do you just want to have a beer or a glass of wine, which is 13%? So there is the issue of potency. I think people regulate. That is, instead of smoking the half a bag of weed to get Mexican weed to get high, they may take 2 or 3 puffs of marijuana. And I say puffs. People are doing edibles. There's other ways of ingestion of marijuana, and it's hard to separate the issue between the legitimate medical use and those who simply want to fill euphoric off of cannabis. But you've raised some great issues, and those are issues that are being debated right now in this country. And again, it is serious issues because, you know, people do stupid stuff. People leave their children in hot cars, folks. Okay, if you leave your child in a hot car, you're probably going to leave your marijuana on the table for your child. People do stupid stuff, and they need to be held responsible for their actions when they do stupid stuff. So,
hey guys, we're at the end of our time frame. It's a very interesting conversation. Some of you may have additional questions or comments, or want to debate James on some of these topics.
We got a website.
We're never at a loss for interesting topics here at South Side. Thank you very much.